Good evening, everybody. A huge thank you for joining us and for joining us on time as well. And in respect of your joining us on time, we're going to start on time. Thank you for joining us for the Year 11 and Year 13 parent Zoom session on exam arrangements for 2023. Now, whether you are an experienced parent in terms of exams or whether this is your first time through, we absolutely know that supporting a child through their GCSEs, their IGCSEs, or their A-level examinations can be a daunting experience. With a range of regulations and protocols, technical terminology, and exam boards, and at the centre of it all, your child navigating an intensive period of revision and high-stakes exams. We are here tonight to answer your questions, to share some key information, some guidance, and to reassure you that we are all very much in this together, and quite literally in terms of having children going through exams at the moment. Before we crack on with the evening, let me introduce you to members of our leadership team who are here joining us tonight to support you in answering questions and sharing information. First of all, we have our Vice Principal for Learning and Progression, David Hellier.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's lovely to see you all here.
And David is all things really reporting, progression, data, curriculum, and examinations at the secondary campus. And let me introduce you also to Richard Stockings, our Vice Principal for our students.
Hello, everyone.
And many of you will already be familiar with Richard, who oversees our student care and our pastoral provision at the campus. And again, many of you will be familiar with our Head of Higher Education and Careers, Joe Marshall.
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
And also our Examinations Officer, Cynthia Charles.
Hi, everyone.
And finally, also joining us tonight is our Campus Services Manager, Hazura.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hazura.
And we'll tell you a little bit more about Hazura later in the presentation, but in terms of your key contact person on the day of exams, Hazura and her team will be ready and willing to be in communication should the need arise. So we've built this Zoom evening around the questions that you have raised in the G form that went out maybe a week or so ago now. And from that form, picking up on the themes of the questions, the session would be divided into 3 different parts. During part 1, David Hellier, our Vice Principal for Learning and Progression, will talk about the specific exam arrangements in place once study leave or examination leave begins on the 15th of May. And David will also explain any of the key exam board regulations you should be aware of. During part 2 of tonight's session, Joe Marshall, Head of Higher Ed and Careers, will speak briefly about results days, higher education, and anything that he feels is relevant for you to know and understand at the moment. And then finally, during part 3, Richard Stockings, Vice Principal for Students, will focus on student wellbeing and support during this important time. And there will be opportunities for you to ask questions that have not perhaps been covered by us at the end of each of the parts. So part 1, part 2, and part 3. And we will invite those questions through the chat function, and more on that when we get to those points in the evening. We will be muting your microphones throughout, and this Zoom is being recorded so that any parents who are not able to attend can get access to this session. So you might at this point wish to switch your camera off if you haven't done so already. And just to let you know that we will be aiming to stick to the 45 minutes allocated to this session. So without further ado, I will now pass over to David Hellier, who will share with you the ins and outs of this year's exam arrangements. Over to you, David.
Great, thank you, Maria. Right, so during this section on examination arrangements, I'll focus on key dates, study leave and access to campus, exam regulations, any other points of note arising from parent questions. Right, so starting with key dates. IGCSE examinations will take place from the 26th of April to the 23rd of June. A-levels will take place from the 4th of May to the 23rd of June as well. The last formal day of school for Year 11 and 13 students will be Friday, the 12th of May. After this date, study leave commences, and as in all examination years, students move into a deliberately flexible and independent period of time, which allows them to manage their schedule and preparation in a way that suits them. Each student is different, and each student's schedule is different, with many having multiple exams in one day, and exams that go late into the evening, often beyond 9 o'clock. Moving on to study leave and access to the campus. As we move into the study period, teachers will be organising structured study during these lessons. Students are not required to come to school during exam leave, except for their exams. However, we welcome them here to study. Given that normal registration is suspended for them in this period, they are expected to use the QR code sign-in system. This is essential so we know who is on site in the event of an emergency. These QR codes will be in the main reception area, the library, and the sixth form area. Year 11 and Year 13 students are allowed to leave campus. They will need to register in and out when they do so using the QR code sign-in system. They will be provided with a lanyard to hold their student card, which must be worn at all times. Exams this year will take place in the multi-purpose sports hall, which is a more secluded, quieter and comfortable venue for our examination students. It's also where they took their mocks this year as well. For students with particular access arrangements, they will have examinations in the temporary block. Students may study in the library, and for Year 13 students, the sixth form area. When on site, students must adhere to these locations. In addition, after 5 o'clock, all students, both Year 11 and sixth form, must only be in the library. Students must not be anywhere else on campus. If students do not comply with this, then moving forward, they will only be allowed on site for their exams. For evening exams, the canteen will be open until 7 o'clock and will serve a limited menu. Note that food or drink must be consumed in designated areas and not in the library. Food deliveries are not permitted on campus. In line with our approach to safeguarding and to ensure the integrity of our examination process, parents' drivers are not allowed to wait on site. This will be enforced by our guards and campus wardens. Parents will need to ensure that they have arrangements for the collection of their children once exams are completed. This is particularly important for late examinations. Note that students who are not collected at the end of the examination will need to wait under supervision from the campus warden in the main reception area. Please note that there are many food and beverages outlets in the vicinity of the school if you wish to remain nearby. If your child has an exam before the official start date of exam leave, then students are allowed to be excused from lessons that day to aid their preparation. If their exam is in the morning, students are expected to attend classes in the afternoon. Exam regulations is the next focus area. In the event of student absence from exams, please inform the main reception and the exams office. Our campus service team, led by Hazura, will be staying late on days when we have evening examinations. This means that your call to reception will be answered up to 30 minutes after the start of the final exam. According to AQA and Edexcel exam boards, they require a student to have completed 25% of the publicly examinable content in order to receive a grade. The Cambridge Examination Board requires at least one component to have been examined publicly. Resits for examinations are in November. In terms of specific exam regulations, students are being made aware of the Joint Council for Qualifications, or JCQ, regulations regarding prohibited and permitted items in exam venues, and they have access to this information for future reference via the exams Google site, which was also shared on a letter that was recently sent to parents. Please ensure that these regulations are followed closely, as failure to do so can result in disqualification. One particular point of note here is the possession or presence of any electronic devices such as mobile phones in the exam venues or in the exam venue toilets. Any such devices must be secured in a locker before entering the exam venue. This is something that has been stressed with students, and I will re-emphasize that again. It's really, really important that they don't come into the exam room with a mobile phone in their pocket, as that's what they're used to doing walking around campus. So it's really important that that doesn't happen. Other points arising from parent questions. I think that most of the questions asked by parents and students have been answered so far. The only remaining ones that need to be addressed are in relation to dress code and examination resits. So for dress code, students should attend exams attired as they attend lessons. So for year 11, it's school uniform, and for year 13, it's as per the sixth form dress code. Note, students are not allowed to wear hoodies or tops with pockets in the examination hall. They're also not allowed to wear watches of any description into the exam hall. So that includes analog watches as well as so-called smart watches. There's an opportunity to resit exams, and that's usually in the November examination window. Other practical issues relating to refreshments, lateness, those type of things have been covered in the exam assembly given this week to year 11 and year 13, the slides of which have been shared with the students. So, to summarize, please be mindful of the JCQ exam regulations. Students must use the QR codes for signing in and out of the campus. Students have been supported in their preparation and revision, will continue to be able to, will continue to be able to access support via their teachers during study leave. The library is the main base for examination students during study leave. I'll now pass back to Maria for any questions.
Thank you, David. I hope you can hear me. The heavens have just opened here. We've got a lot of rain at EP right now, so I'll talk a little bit louder. We know there's a lot of information there, and much of that has been included in the recent letter that David mentioned, but also is on that G site, that one-stop shop for any information regarding regulations, expectations, arrangements for the children. But what we're going to do now is really to take some questions. So if you have any questions on the first part of this session that were not addressed by David, please could I ask you now to add these to the chat and direct them to me, Maria Rozowicki, by selecting my name from the drop-down menu. And I will ask you to restrict your questions to the topic in this section of the Zoom. So that's exam arrangements for 2022 to 23. We will be moving on to results day. We will be moving on to student care and wellbeing shortly. So if you have questions on those areas, if I could ask you to hold them for now, that would be really helpful. And also, if you've got questions that are very specific to your child or your situation, or they're outside the scope of this Zoom, if I could ask you please to contact the relevant team via email using the contact details that we'll share with you soon, that would be really helpful. So we've got about 5 to 10 minutes for questions on this section, and we will try to answer as many as you have in that time. Okay. So, David, we've got some questions coming in here about absence, and particularly if a child falls ill for any component of their exam. I know you mentioned earlier about the minimum requirements an exam board needs in order to register for a grade, but perhaps you could just talk to us a little bit about what happens if my child is ill on the day of an exam.
So if your child is ill on the day of the exam, obviously contact reception. So you email we'll put the email addresses up at the end. They're on the slide there. And also you'll need to let exams know the exam.ep email address, and that will be Cynthia, who will then pick that up. They will then fill out. So if that means your child is absent from that exam, that means that the exam team will then complete the necessary paperwork that goes to the exam board. So if there's more than one paper, they've missed that one paper, but they've attended the other papers, if there's more than one, then that would determine the situation in terms of the grade, and the exam board as well will determine how much they've missed and what they then have to do in terms of, is it a resit, or is the fact they just missed one component, or if it's 25%, that is enough to then, they will get a grade from that.
Thank you, David. And then we've got some questions here about study leave. So the question that I'm looking at the moment is, during the period of study leave, so that's from the 15th of May onwards, when students have no more formal lessons, they only need to be in school for their exams, but they can be in school to study in those specific places. We're being asked by Elspeth about whether or not children can have access to their teachers during that time.
So during the study period time, they can have access to their teachers. So obviously that can be done through a variety of means. A timetable has been shared, a revision timetable has been shared with through the letter with students and teachers. So there is a scheduled time when teachers will be available, so students can come onto the campus, they can meet their teacher at that designated time, and they can discuss whatever their concerns or questions are. They also can email their teachers, they're also familiar with doing that, and they can also contact them through Google Classroom. So there are various ways that they can contact their teachers. So if they don't want to come on campus, then obviously they can, as I say, they can email, or they can attend on campus. Some of the revision sessions will also be done through Google Meet, so they'll be online. So there's a combination of face-to-face and online, and the revision schedule that's been shared will kind of make it obvious which are which.
Great, and Richard will talk in a little while as well more about that support in place. David, on the subject of what you can wear during the exam, if children are cold and they want to bring something else, what are they allowed to bring to keep them warm? What are they not allowed to bring to keep them warm?
Okay, so the multi-purpose hall where they're doing exams does get quite cold. It's quite hard to regulate that temperature. So students have been made aware of that, and they probably learned from their experience from the mocks when it was quite chilly in there. So they can wear a plain jumper, plain top of some sort, nothing with a hood, nothing with pockets, and they put it on after they've entered the examination room. So it's basically some form of top without a hood, some form of top without pockets, and preferably without any kind of writing, logos, etc. on it. Certainly for 11s.
That's great. Thanks, David. A question about how the children will know the time if they can't bring watches. There are clocks in the exam hall. We make sure that those children can see the time. And that's one of the reasons actually why they're in the multi-purpose hall, because the environment there is much more conducive to the children, and they can see that clock. So yeah, don't worry, the children will be able to see the time. We've got a question here about whether or not a parent can pick a child up if they have an exam in the morning, in the afternoon. Now, if this is during study leave, exam leave, absolutely. The children only need to be on campus for their exams after the 12th of May. So from the 15th of May, they can leave campus, they can come back. It's one of the reasons why we're asking them to wear lanyards and to make sure that they're using a QR code to register in and register out. So for safeguarding and emergency reasons, we know who is on campus and who is not on campus. Now, if that question is about can they be taken out and brought back during school day before study leave, then the answer there would be no, because they are still in their scheduled curriculum time. But if it's study leave, absolutely. A question here about if they're scheduled, if the exams are scheduled prior to study leave. Now, I think Dave did mention this, that there are a small number of students for whom there are a couple of exams that take place before study leave. And in that scenario, if the exam is in the afternoon, then of course they're not coming in the morning, and we would expect them to be in an afternoon session have they had a morning exam. Dave, is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think that kind of covers it. Thanks.
Great. And then David, in terms of what refreshments they're allowed to take in the exam hall, are they allowed to take water into the exam room?
They can take water in a plastic bottle with no labels, nothing on it, just a plain clear plastic bottle with water.
Great. Getting quite a few questions now just about that clarity of location during study leave. Once again, the children from the 15th of May only need to be on campus for exams, but we offer them the opportunity to study on campus if they want to, or go to the scheduled revision sessions. But I'm sure you can appreciate that with a large campus in operation, we must know where the students are at all times. So if they're coming to study, they must be in the library or the sixth form if they're year 13. After 5 o'clock, everybody must be in the library at that point. Unless they're in a revision session before 5 o'clock, that's really where they're going to. And we must stress to you that in the unlikely event that we find that students are not sticking to those areas, we will take that privilege away of coming in to study on campus. We must know that where they are and that they are safe. So please, if we could ask you to reinforce that message at home, the study spaces are the library, or if you're year 13, the sixth form centre, or you're in a revision session. Obviously, if they're eating, they're in the marquee outside, they're down into the stables, but otherwise there should be nowhere else on campus that the children are, in order that we can safeguard. Okay. And then just one more question that I can take about the food. Yeah, the House of Taste have very kindly agreed that when we have late examinations, they will keep the stables open. And it's the same payment options that the children have at the moment. And yes, just to clarify on the registration and study leave, because they are not required to go to registration or any timetabled lessons at that point, it is really vital that they register on and off campus using the QR code and then go to the library if their exam is not ready at that time. Okay.
I'm sorry, Maria, I've just had a question that's been sent to me about where people get the exam schedule from. So students will be given a hard copy of the exam timetable, their particular exam timetable, but you can access it through the ISAMS parent or student app. The timetable for each student is in there, and they were given that information yesterday in their exam assembly as well.
Thanks, David. Okay, I hope that we've managed to answer most of the questions that have come in the chat for that section. If we haven't, forgive us, but that will be because we've either already mentioned it or because it's more relevant to another section. But again, this whole meeting is being recorded if you do want to access this later. So we are now going to move on to Joe Marshall, our Head of Higher Ed and Careers. And Joe is going to talk to us about Results Day and that process and what's relevant in terms of higher ed. So hi, Joe.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much, Maria. Yeah, I'm not going to speak for too long now, but I've just got things mostly to talk about, as we said, about Results Day, or the two Results Days. So we've got A-Level and we've got GCSEs as well. So A-Level Results Day, which is going to be on the 17th of August this year. Probably one of the key things to know about that, first of all, is that myself and the rest of the HE team will be on hand. We'll be in work, in the office, contactable by phone, email. You can physically come in and see us if you need to. So if you need any help on Results Day, you can have that directly from us. That's no problem at all. We do know that this year, the A-levels, as they go returning back to their kind of pre-COVID state, there may be some slightly higher grade boundaries and some slightly stricter marking in some of them, which may put a couple of students within the UCAS system into clearing. That's absolutely fine. That's UCAS clearing is part of the system that's designed to make sure that all students find the university they want. But if you need any help or guidance with navigating the clearing system, we'll be on hand to help you with that on Results Day. Okay, for those students not going to the UK, the key help that we provide on that day is mostly around documents. So the thing to do for that would be make sure that they've entered any documents they're going to require to our Sialfo student system before Results Day. Again, if there's any confusion about Sialfo or where to add things, please just send the students to us. We'll talk to them and we'll let them know where they need to add this information. Just moving on then to the GCSE Results Day, which will be the following week. Again, myself and my team over the last few weeks have been having quite extensive one-to-one conversations with all of the Year 11 students and pretty much got through them all now. I think there's still a couple left to go. And obviously, we've been looking at their A-level choices, you know, in relation to their interests, but also in relation to things like university choice. We're aware that GCSE outcome might have a bit of an impact on that. If they did much better in an area or less well than they'd hoped for in another, that may change their A-level choices. Again, we'll be completely on hand to meet with you, either student, parent, or both, to discuss any changes, any implications that might have for university choice further down the line, or anything else surrounding careers or anything to do with their A-level decisions. Okay, so in summary, A-level results will be released on 17th of August, and we'll be on hand to help with that. And the GCSE results will be the following week on the 24th. Again, HE team will be available for both sets of students. And we're happy really to meet with students, parents at any time between then and now in order to deal with any issues surrounding university choice and A-level choice. So thank you very much. That's enough for me for now. We hand back over to Maria, and I'm happy to take any questions around these topics.
Thanks, Joe. That's great. And I can't emphasize enough to you, and most of you will be aware of that, just how much personalized support the higher ed team has already given your children and will continue to give your children as needed. So if you've got any questions now for Joe on Results Day or about results and Results Day, could I please ask you to return to the chat? Direct those questions to me by selecting my name, Maria Ozoiki, from the drop-down menu. And again, if I could ask you to try and restrict your questions to the topic in this section of the Zoom, which is results, and we will be moving on to student care and wellbeing shortly. So hold those questions for then. Once again, if you've got questions that are very specific to your child, then if I could perhaps ask you to contact the relevant team member directly, and we will get back to you. Now, I do have one here, and I'm wondering if this one might go to Cynthia, our examinations officer. Cynthia, we've got a question about the different ways that exam boards release their results, and in particular, AQA. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? So we've got a parent here who's saying AQA A-level results are not released online to students, is their understanding. So how do they get the results?
Okay, hi, good evening, everyone. So for AQA, we will release the results. Either you can email us in advance to let us know that you would like us to email your provisional statement of results, or you would like to call into school. But please take note, at the time that you might be calling in, the traffic might be high, so our volume of calls coming in can be high. So it might take some time for you to get to us. So it's best maybe to email us. So AQA doesn't provide any electronic or websites that you can go, or student portal that you can go, that you can download the results. So we are only either to email. The only one way is to call us, or we can email.
Thanks, Cynthia. Which email address do the results come to?
Okay, so you can email us to exam.ep@alice-smith.edu.my.
And then presumably we're obviously replying to the email address there, or if
Yes.
we're doing anything from the system, it's the email address we have registered on the system. Yeah,
Yes, that's right.
awesome. Can you please repeat that email address, Cynth?
Okay, the email is exam.ep, so exam without S, exam.ep@alice-smith.edu.my.
Great. Now, Joe, is there anything that you wanted to add to?
Yes,
yeah.
just to say, particularly with the UK, obviously those results are sent directly. So they will receive them regardless of the exam board on results day. In fact, they would have got them before results day. So with the university decision-making process, they receive those A-level results normally up to 5 days before. So they would already have that. So there won't be a need to send the results to UK universities straight away. And obviously, as we mentioned earlier, with non-UK universities, that'll be done by adding stuff to the CIALFO system. And as Cynthia's outlined, we can give, provisional results details and things like that if they need to go out.
Thanks, Joe. If you can stay on, I've got some CIALFO questions for you here. I might just read them to you if that's okay.
Okay.
If non-UK universities have not been applied for through CIALFO, do we still upload documents through there, or is there another system available?
Yes, please. It's just basically our record system for it. So they'll be able to add the university on there. It doesn't have to be a direct application using the system, but it's just they'll add it on there. Again, if they're unsure in any way, then come into the office and we can work with them. But let's just say it was UCD Dublin. You might not have used the system to apply in any way, but it's just adding it there, knowing what UCD would want, and adding that to a list. So it's really just instead of a spreadsheet, really, that we're using it just as a kind of as a touch point. So we know it's all centralized and we know what the student will need on the day. So again, if there's any uncertainty about that, just send the student into the office.
Great. And then on the same kind of line there, what sort of documents are you envisaging there?
Like statements of results, transcripts, things like that. That's normally what we're talking about here. Again, it would be up to the student just to make sure they know what's required on the day. Just to make sure that they know with these universities what's specifically being asked for, because it varies, not just, even within countries, even within universities. So just checking that they know what documents are going to be needed and adding those to CIALFO so we know to produce them.
If we're talking before the results come out, Joe, have you got any examples there of potentially what documents we would be talking about for the non-UK?
Well, just like I said, I mean, a statement of results, a transcript, you know, it's normally going to be some format of results reporting. You know, that's likely what it's going to be.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat at the moment. If something occurs to you later, by all means, pop it in. But at that point, we will, thanks, Joe, and move on to Richard Stockings, our Vice Principal for our students. And Richard's going to speak about student care, well-being and support. Hi, Richard.
Thank you, and thank you, Joe. Hello, everybody. Nice to see some students in the audience. Welcome. So as I talk through this piece, I will also be addressing students here as well, if that's okay. I'm going to speak to you about student care and well-being. What's more important than that? Nothing really. So we'll examine some of the preparations we've done so far with students. We'll talk a little bit about managing that exam experience, and then what support continues as we go through the exam season. So I think it is important to reinforce with you this evening some of the key messages that we have been giving students as we prepared for the exams that are coming up. We've supported both year groups by giving them an exam experience through techniques that will help them in the lead up to the exams. Our personal review conversations, and thank you for engaging in those, parents, really gave a balanced approach to the exams, and the messaging was there really about support networks and realistic expectations that were being set as we prepare for the exams. Prior to the exams themselves, we have talked to students about a number of things. One thing I would say, with Easter coming up, we do think there should be balance. Of course, we want our students to study. It's a fantastic opportunity to study, but still we should build in regular breaks. We should have a healthy attitude and actually not lock yourself in a room all day. That's not going to be healthy. Bear in mind, students have worked really hard for 12 weeks, and whilst everyone else gets a break, they don't. So let's just be mindful, students and parents, about what is achievable in that 2-week holiday. So continue to look after yourselves. I do believe it's important to keep exercising or follow your passion activities, but be mindful of what those activities are. For example, if you're a rugby player and it's a big rugby tournament at the weekend and you might get injured and not be able to sit your exams, is it worth the risk? Maybe for a while you might need to cut back on those more dangerous activities. So be mindful of that. Do take time away from revision, structure your time, but don't procrastinate. I have a student who's in the audience tonight. I won't embarrass him, but I'm coaching him at the moment. And one thing that he gets distracted by is his phone. So when he goes to do all his practice, he hands his phone in to his mother. Thank you, Mum, for that. And it just makes that experience more realistic and stops him from getting distracted. We know that phones are a big one. Eat healthy foods. Do not underestimate the importance of a balanced diet. Get enough protein. Don't stress eat during the exams. This can negatively impact on energy levels and particularly fatigue. I've been on invigilation myself in the evenings, and students can crash a little bit with their energy. So think about those long days, how you're getting your carbohydrates in, making sure that we're not just eating sugary foods and then suddenly we want to sleep and slump at 8 o'clock at night, because we're not used to actually doing our work then so much. So, you know, model that, do some practice in the evening time as well so you're ready. Drink fluids, lots of research about hydration and its impact on keeping the mind active. And of course, dehydration does the opposite. So you can take water into the exams. We do issue water, but please do be mindful of that. You won't like this one, students, sorry, but balance your social activities. Let's be a little bit sensible. There might have to be a bit of pain for the next couple of months where you don't socialize as much. And then of course, you've got a lovely summer coming, 10, 11 weeks. So, and longer for some. So there is some social time coming, but you know, the suggestion is that we do cut back a bit over these next few weeks and focus really on high quality sleep. And that's a big one. Sleep habits, when you're not in school all the time, it can be affected. You really do need to get into good sleep habits, early morning starts, want to be fresh, long days. So do look after your sleep. And then during the exams, you know, we've talked to students, we've gone into the exam hall and talked about breathing, our mindful breaths. Take some time. Don't get stressed out by questions that derail you. Take a little moment. Don't get caught up in all the analyzing before an exam. What have you done? Have you revised this? And then afterwards, what did you do for question 7? Don't get caught up into the exam drama. Once it's done, move on. And that's a message that you can reinforce at home. What causes a lot of stress? Being late. Mr. Haley has already mentioned this. So do allow extra time. You've heard about what you do in that situation, but stress is caused by rushing. Take the stress out of it, allow more time. And of course, when you're in that exam, read the questions carefully, have a strategy for the exam paper. You're doing lots of work with your teachers at the moment, and don't answer questions you haven't studied. You'd be amazed how many students go into an exam and then they come out and said, I haven't even studied that book or that play, and I've answered the wrong question. That's stress. Breathe, calm, strategy. And then what support? Well, again, as David said, where appropriate, students and teachers have been focusing in our revision sessions on exam skills in this last term, and most subjects will nearly have finished all of the course content. So there'll be revision sessions when we come back and revision sessions during the exam time. Some of them will be face-to-face, some of them will be online. There was a letter sent on the 22nd of March, so check that. And these will review any key contents, allow students to access their teachers, have discussions. So look out for that. That's a really important part of the support as we go through the exam period. Please also remember, because students can be based there, that the library holds a wealth of resources to assist with exam preparations, both online and hard copies, and students can access these as required, either remotely or whilst on campus. Also, finally, almost, tutors and teachers are still available emotionally. There's been a massive investment in year 11 and year 13 emotionally from tutors, co-tutors. So please continue to use us. We're there for you. Even though we're not seeing you every day, we're still there behind the scenes and you can access us, email or in person. Key stage leaders and AKSLs are also on hand. So again, keep the communication flowing. We have our counsellors absolutely still available. If a student wants to come in and have a counselling session because they've been having them beforehand, that doesn't have to stop just because you've finished your normal program. That can continue through the exams, and I would advise it actually. And the personalised learning faculty is still on hand to support students with additional needs. So after all that, sorry, a lot of information, let's summarise. What do we want? We want to help support your child to take responsibility for their well-being. Let's empower them to do that over the next few weeks. Create balance in terms of study, exams, and healthy habits, and they can start right now. Of course, many of you have them already. Know the academic and pastoral staff are still on hand to support your child in the lead up and during the exams. Have a plan to tackle the examination environment to avoid anxiety and fear. Let's change the focus around stress and exams and say, hey, this is a challenge to show everybody what you know. Let's go to that challenge positively. Let's embrace that message as parents. We've done that as teachers, and I think our students are ready for that now. And obviously just take responsibility, parents, for drop-offs and pickups to ensure your child is not late and is also not left on site at night, meaning a long night for them and for the staff who have to stay here and look after them. All right, thank you. I'll pass back to Maria for questions.
Thank you, Richard. That was great. So that was the final presentation of this Zoom on the arrangements in place for year 11 and 13 examinations this year. Thank you for your engagement. Now, we appreciate that there is an awful lot of information here to take in, and we do have a few minutes now to take some final questions that you might have. And that might be on Richard's segment on student well-being and support and care, or it might be on something that you feel hasn't quite been covered here yet. So again, if I could ask you to use that drop-down box in the chat, find my name, Maria Osawiki, select it, pop your question in the chat, and we will endeavour to answer as many possible in the remaining 5 minutes. And again, if you've got something that's really specific to your child or your situation, please reach out and contact us and we will work that through with you. Now, I do have one here. I'm going to send this to David and then I'm going to send it to Rich. What final thoughts can you give to parents in terms of what the sessions in lessons will look like after Easter?
Was that directed to me or Richard? Did you?
Yeah, I'm going to go to you first, David, if that's all right, and then if Richard wants to add anything.
I think the sessions will be they'll be very varied, and they will be more about reassuring students, checking what student questions have come up as a result of their revision, going through past examination questions with them, checking their understanding. So there'll be an element of kind of, obviously they won't be learning new content if they've finished the course, which most students have now, or most subjects have now finished the course. So it will be more about that kind of reassurance, checking for understanding, past papers. Yeah, I think that's probably kind of how I would say that most teachers will be approaching that, and getting students to really kind of think about the revision they've done, and the extent to which they feel that it's kind of is working for them, if that makes sense.
Thanks, David. Rich, would you like to add anything there? So that experience of children in lessons after Easter.
Yeah, great question. I think the biggest thing is that, yeah, students, most of the content is completed, so it's now a question of just preparing for the exam. And I think the students can be quite proactive here themselves and ask teachers for support strategically how to manage that exam. We do know from learning and from what research tells us that lots of students do tend to safe revise, and that means they'll revise stuff they already know. And advice would be from a lot of our teachers is, try and focus on the stuff that you don't know, prioritize your revision, and then utilize the teachers while they're available for the more difficult stuff that maybe might come up that can catch you out, rather than the safe revision that from the mock. So we've had the mocks, we've had the feedback. Really focus on the stuff you don't know.
Thanks, Rich. Now, David and Cynthia, I know that we have kind of covered how students will receive their results, but could you just add some final thoughts there for parents that are wondering when those results come in, whether they're GCSE or whether they're A-level, exactly how are children and parents receiving those results? So, David, is that you, or would you prefer Cynthia to answer that?
Are you okay to answer that, Cynthia?
Okay, hi everyone. So on the results day, you're more than welcome to actually come to school and collect your results. We'll be here. And you have any questions regarding your results, we'll be here to also assist you. For example, if you like to ask about remarks, or if there's any options that's available for retakes, we should be able to answer those questions on the results day. So you're more than welcome. You can come to school to collect your physical copies of provisional statement of results.
And if people can't get to school, Cynthia?
You can email us. Again, the email address is exam.ep@alice-smith.edu.my. You can email us and we will send you the copies of provisional statement of results. The other one way you can contact us always is to call us. So there'll be someone available in the office, myself, my colleague, and David will be here to answer your calls.
And we will send all that information out to you again, and it is again on that G site. So in terms of the specific timings on those days, that you will find all of that information there. Off the top of your head, Cynthia, do you know what time of day those results are available?
For Edexcel, AQA results will be available at 2 p.m.
Great. And someone's asking here, Cynthia, what is a provisional statement of results?
All right, provisional statement of results means that our results that we get on the results day is actually provisional, providing if you do not do any remark, the results then will be printed into the certificates. And say if you have done a remark, and according to remark, your grades can go up or your grades can remain the same or drop, then whatever that comes out from the outcome of the remark remains as the final grade that will be printed on your certificate.
That's great. Thank you, Cynthia. So again, if this is your first time through, that these are great questions, because the children don't get those certificates in the first instance. They get a printout of what the results are at this time. If they choose to go for a remark for something, of course, those results change. So the certificates come later. Okay. Well, I can't see any more questions in the chat that we haven't already addressed. Please let me thank you again. I hope that the Zoom platform was useful to you. We chose it today in order to try and give access to as many people as possible, knowing the busy schedules, knowing the traffic. If you would have preferred another way of doing this, then we're really happy to hear that feedback. So please do get in touch with any of us on that. And this isn't the end. We've had a Zoom tonight, but that's not the end of the support and the communication. So please, 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 if you have questions, particularly around these areas of examinations, we know that this is a daunting period. Just reach out. We would much rather you reach out and ask us a question than to be worrying about something unnecessarily at home. And if I could ask, Rani, would you mind popping onto the screen the contact details? So just to flag up for you here that obviously my email address is there, as is David. David, again, all things examinations. Cynthia, our examinations officer, her email is there. You've met Joe today in terms of higher ed and results. Hazura, and again, Hazura is going to be our communications gatekeeper on the day of the exams. Her team will be manning that reception desk. If something comes up, call them. They will be your first port of call. You've got Richard from Student Care and Wellbeing. And then you've also got Andrew Howard, who is our head of sixth form, and Charlotte Moore, who is our head of year 10 and year 11, our head of Key Stage 4. These are probably going to be your key contact people over the next few weeks and months. And if you contact any one of us and we're not the right person, we will simply pass you on to whoever is. So these contact details are all available on that G site. And again, the recording will also be sent out to you. So thank you very, very much. Enjoy your evenings. Take care of them and take care of yourselves. And we will see you when it's all over. And the Zoom is going to close in about 10 seconds time. Take care, everyone.